Right, so we have a new UFC lightweight champion of the world, and his name is Charles Oliveira. Charles Oliveira defeated Michael Chandler via TKO in the second round at the main event of UFC 262. My name is Rahul J-Chan. This is the Battle Camp. Thank you very much for joining me. All right, so going into this fight, I didn't make a preview, right? I didn't share my thoughts going into this fight. I didn't make a prediction during fight week. But I felt inclined to sit here and make this video today because I really enjoyed the fight, and I really respect the journey of Charles Oliveira. So I just wanted to speak on that a little bit. But before I speak on the fight itself and Charles Oliveira as a fighter, going into the fight, I had my reservations about Charles Oliveira and Michael Chandler competing for the belt because I didn't feel like they were the right guys. I've spoken about this in previous videos. I felt like Justin Gaethje and Dustin Poirier were the two guys that should have been fighting for this vacant title, both being the most recent interim champions and guys that had recently lost to Khabib. But now that this fight has happened, I've kind of changed that opinion because neither Michael Chandler or Oliveira have ever had their name attached to Khabib, and I feel like for the greater good of the division, it kind of feels like, it's good to have a brand new face as the champion, someone that has no relationship with our old champion, Khabib, a guy who, retired and relinquished the title. To be clear, though, I did feel like both of these guys needed one more victory against a big name in that division to really solidify them as actual title contenders. But it is what it is. We are where we are. A lot of the time in the UFC, kind of, it's more about being in the right place at the right time than it is, what you've actually physically done in the octagon. I feel like this is one of those occasions, and they both got given an opportunity that I don't actually begrudge them for, because they're both very similar in terms of their journey, right? So they both have been fighting at the highest level for over a decade. They both had their fair share of wins and losses, ups and downs. And in terms of their journeys, like, you can't sit here and say, oh, they don't deserve it, because they put in the work, they put in the hours, they put in the graft, and fair play to them. They've been given an opportunity, they took it. The fight itself, like I said, I didn't make a prediction because I couldn't separate the two. I felt like going into the fight, Charles Oliveira had the better arsenal, more tools in his toolbox when it comes to the stand-up. But I felt like Michael Chandler had the best tool, because I felt like his explosiveness and his power would have a massive influence on how this fight went. The fight itself, I really enjoyed it because, it lasted, 6 minutes, right? But there was so much action in those 6 minutes, and both fighters got the fight in the domain where they feel most comfortable. So Michael Chandler hurt Oliveira. Now, whether he knocked Oliveira down or whether Oliveira dropped down himself to try and secure a takedown, I don't know. But he hurt Oliveira, right? That's fair to say. And Chandler had the opportunity to finish the fight with his punches, and Oliveira was able to navigate out of those deep, choppy waters. And on the other hand, Oliveira was able to get Michael Chandler on the ground, and he got his back, and Chandler was able to navigate out of that situation, explode out of that position in the ground, and get the fight back standing. So both fighters had the fight in their grasp in terms of a position where they felt most comfortable. And their opponent was good enough to not lose within that position. I found that interesting. I enjoyed that. The way the fight itself ended, I was surprised but not surprised, right? So I felt like Oliveira had enough power to hurt Chandler, but I felt like Chandler had enough experience of being in those adverse positions to be able to get himself out of them. But the thing that surprised me a little bit, I suppose, is when Oliveira hurt Chandler, is just his killer instinct and the way he kind of was able to, we see this often in fights, right? When a fighter's hurt his opponent, it's almost like the adrenaline gets the better of him, the moment gets too big for him, and he throws a flurry of punches, and some of them miss. Oliveira was able to land consistently in that short, 5-second time frame from when he first knocked Chandler down to when the fight was eventually finished. So the temperament, the mind state of Oliveira in that moment is, I suppose, what kind of impressed me a lot, I think, is the best way of saying it. But Charles Oliveira himself, right? So this is what I wanted to kind of just touch on a little bit in this video. As a fighter, Charles Oliveira. So look, we heard going into this fight over and over and over again, and then once he became champion, we heard people talk about how he's had the longest journey of any fighter within the UFC before he became champion, right? So he's been in the organization for 10, 11 years, and he's finally the king of the mountain. And obviously that doesn't happen very often. There's a reason why people are making a big deal of that as a fact, because when someone has the journey that Charles Oliveira has had within the UFC, it's very rare for them to finally reach the top of the mountain after such a long kind of journey with such big ups and downs. And just to kind of add to that, there's a couple of things that I feel like Charles Oliveira is an anomaly to. He's the exception to the rule. The first thing is, when a fighter joins a top organization such as the UFC at such a young age as Charles Oliveira did at 20 years old, generally speaking, they age like a blonde bird that smokes 40 cigarettes a day, drinks on a regular basis, and goes on the sunbed twice a week. Like, they start looking older than they actually are. Charles Oliveira is the opposite, because he's 31 and it feels like he's still yet to reach his prime. Do you know what I mean? And that's testament to his, just his hunger for the game and the way he's been able to improve as the years have progressed. The second thing is, when a fighter has had a journey like Charles Oliveira's, in terms of the ups and downs, wins and losses, you tend to see a switch in how that fighter perceives himself, right? Because generally speaking, a lot of the time when fighters come into the organization, their objective, their goal, their aim is to become the champion. And then something clicks, something switches within them when they realize, I'm not actually good enough to be the champion. And then that's when you start hearing fighters say stuff like, oh, I just want to entertain the fans. I just want to put on a show for the fans. Those kind of sentences in post-fight interviews. And when a fighter enters that sort of mind state, it's when a fighter is now basically in the territory of being a gatekeeper. And I feel like Charles Oliveira's career reflects that of a fighter that was destined to become a gatekeeper, just because he had big wins, but then he had big losses, and he had losses in which he was tapped out and he was knocked out. And it wasn't necessarily always against, guys that were at the top of the division, whether it's in the featherweight division or the lightweight division. But he's been learning on the job. And I'm just impressed by his mind state and his belief in himself, and I feel like it showed leading into the fight, because I was watching him on Embedded and on the Countdown show, and just the way he was speaking, and maybe it's got to do with the fact that he speaks in Portuguese and I don't understand it, but it feels like the words just flow out of his mouth and float into the atmosphere, and I'm sat there reading the subtitles thinking, bloody hell, this guy really is a good talker. He comes across as a guy that is so self-assured, and he talks so well. And the reason why he talks so well is it feels like he's talking from experience. He's not just saying things. It's not his first time. It's not like he's trying to convince himself in the words he's saying. He's already convinced because he's already had those experiences. That's the way I see it. Do you know what I mean? And I like it, man. I like it. I like the fact that he's had this journey. He's had this hard slog to become the champion, and he's consistently shown improvements, and he's here, he's arrived. Another thing that I like, and this is just a side note, is back in the day when you used to watch Countdown and used to see fighters training, there was always in these like sweaty gyms with sweaty mats with loads of people there, and you know, it felt like the space is too small for the amount of people that are there training. And then nowadays you see in Countdown embedded, and people are at these massive facilities, whether it's the PI or one of these super gyms in Florida or kind of wherever, San Diego or New Mexico, wherever, these massive facilities, state of the art, all of that stuff. And it was nice to see Charles Oliveira training in his ranch, however you pronounce it, in one of them old school kind of sweaty gyms with too many people in there. It just kind of reminded me of how things were 5 to 10 years ago, watching footage of fighters training, getting ready for a big fight. But that's by the by, man. Yeah, I look forward to watching Charles Oliveira's journey unfold, man. Is he going to get better? Is he going to keep improving? Is this just a one and done? Is he going to lose when he defends his title, like, you know, in his first defense of the title? Who knows? But the division is wide open, and you know, there's a lot of guys there waiting to stake their claim, looking to become king of the mountain, the king that Charles Oliveira currently is. Let me know what you guys think about the stuff that I've just said in this video. Please feel free to share your comments below. If there's something that you think that I didn't touch on, please feel free to share it, and I'll give you my response back in the comments. If you enjoy listening to stuff like this and you don't necessarily like watching it on YouTube, subscribe to my podcast. All of this stuff that I put on YouTube, I put them up as podcasts, so you can, you know, listen to it on whatever platform you like the best. All of the links are in the description. Follow my Instagram and Twitter. How about that? At the Battle Camp. And finally, like this video, share this video with a friend, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I'll catch you guys next time.